Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time, welcome. It's good to have you here. And if this is not your first time, it's good to have you back, my loves. My name is Faith. I'm a medical doctor, also a first time mom. And today we're going to be talking about how to appropriately wean a baby from milk to solids. Okay, so obviously a lot of people know about this, but there's a lot of information floating about that we need to clarify. And this is going to be coming from a doctor's perspective, so stay tuned. Okay, first things first, why do we wait 6 months to wean babies? I mean, a lot of people know this is the right time to wait, but not a lot of people know exactly why. And research has shown it's because the baby's digestive system is not fully developed up until 6 months. I mean, they have their digestive organs, but long story short, babies need to wait that long so that their digestive system have developed up to a point where they can accommodate solids in the system. Okay, I know we've seen a lot of things on social media these days where people are going against medical advice and starting less than 6 months, and some people have gotten away with it. That doesn't necessarily make it the right thing to do, because not waiting till 6 months opens room for things like constipation so early in the children, having gut problems, having allergy problems. And if you have a newborn or a young baby, that is the last thing you want to add to your plate. So I'd say stick to the 6 months. There's no rush anyway. They have the rest of their lives to eat plenty food, so why are we rushing it? Okay, so now that's out of the way. By the way, if you see me looking down, it's because I've got my notes here, so I don't miss any points. Okay, for babies between 6 to 8 months, it's important to understand that now that you've started solids, it's very much a taste test to them. You have to understand that between a newborn stage to 6 months, they've just had milk, be it breast milk or formula, they've just had milk. So I think you need to deal with this next phase with a lot of patience and perseverance. The babies will still get most of their nutrition from their milk. So if the babies are not groveling down things straight away, I don't want you to get too worked up. It's a taste test, number one, because it's the first time they're tasting any other texture of food or any other variety of meal. So it's important for you to give them a second to appreciate each meal that you introduce to them. The next thing to note is that it's important to try one meal item at a time. Now, that's because since you're starting something new, you're not sure how your baby will react. You don't know of any allergies that may be hidden in the nooks and crannies. So it's important to start one meal item at a time. So before you start, I'd say make a list of all the food items you'd want your baby to try out. I'd also say make a list of all the food items you eat generally at home, so that you're not going out of your way of making things that you're not usually used to at home. And make a plan to try one meal item at a time each day. Start earlier in the day, give it time, so that you would give the opportunity to understand or see for yourself how the baby has taken to the meal. If there's anything I'd leave you with, the first point is be patient with yourself and the baby. Try one item at a time, and note that baby is still fully reliant on breast milk for most of their nutrition anyway. So don't get too bothered if your baby is not eating like this baby you see on social media. Just give yourself grace and time. So now you're starting solids, and a lot of people start with purees. Purees are very funny, especially for children. It's either hit or miss. Most children take to it easily and they're loving it and guzzling it down. But there's one thing I want you to know. Before you go ahead and start buying all those fancy puree makers, I think take a step back and just take some time. If you have a pot and a blender, you're good. You're actually good. Do not be like me, who went straight ahead to be like, yeah, we're starting solids, I'm gonna get a puree maker. My baby didn't even take to purees. She didn't enjoy purees at all. She went straight for the solids itself. So, but some babies will take to purees, which I've seen. So give yourself maybe a week or two to see if your baby's taking to purees before you go ahead and jump onto that wagon of getting expensive puree makers. The next thing I'd like to highlight is the amount of salt that should be in the baby's food. With babies less than 12 months, it's important that they don't have more than 1 gram of salt in their meals. So ideally no salt at all till they're 12 months, and that's because their little kidneys are still developing. It's not gotten to that point where it's able to filter in a more advanced way like in us adults. So it's important to just keep it off their meals for now, give their kidneys time to develop, and in due time they'll be able to have salt in their meals. So there's no need to rush with that, but that's something to note. Some people do go ahead to give their babies what they eat straight away, gotten away with it, but just know that there's a risk of kidney problems arising if you're introducing salt too early on in their diet. Another tip I'd like to leave you with is, once you start giving babies food, I think avoid peppers for now, like hot chilies, mostly because number one, it has high risk of causing gastric ulcers. That's not even the main thing, but the main thing is because babies still are experimenting with their hands and touching their faces. If they're touching the meals, chances are they're going to touch their eyes and their ears, and they're going to have a very upset baby. I learned the hard way, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to let everyone that needs to know, no, just chill out on the peppers for now. The next thing people think about once they start their babies on solids is to go the baby-led weaning route or not the baby-led weaning route. Now, the baby-led weaning route is basically allowing the baby experiment and take the foods themselves and feed themselves. And the non-baby-led weaning route is you are feeding the baby and you're more in control of how much the baby eats and how the baby eats. And I'm going to give you pros and cons of both of them, and you can choose for yourself what you would prefer to do. I don't think either one is bad, but at the end of the day, I'll let you know the pros and cons and you make the decision for yourself. I'll start with the pros of baby-led weaning. One of it improves their manual dexterity and their hand to mouth and eye coordination. Basically, our babies are developing motor skills at this stage as well, and if you give them the opportunity to be able to be involved with their feeding, like picking up finger foods or food items and putting in their mouth, you're going to help improve these motor skills for them. They're going to get used to it quicker than the average baby who's not been given the opportunity to. I mean, the babies will still develop these motor skills one way or the other anyway, but it's just a way to sort of boost that skill and improve that skill. Another pro of baby-led weaning is it will allow for family meal time. So the baby can be on their chair and having their meals while you all have your meal together. It's a great sort of tradition to start if you want to have family meal times in the future. It allows for family bonding. Obviously, there will still be one person sat next to the baby and supervising the baby and make sure the baby is eating properly. Another pro of baby-led weaning is it helps them appreciate food textures quicker, because we're going to be trying different food items. It's important for them to be able to sort of feel and taste at the same, so that they'll be able to know, okay, certain foods feel differently and that's why they taste differently. They can make that sort of correlation and I guess relation with each food, and that way it helps them appreciate variety and texture a bit better. It's not 100% that they're going to appreciate it better than those that are not baby-led. They're not doing baby-led weaning, but it's just something to know. Another pro is that babies are able to develop this independence in feeding themselves over time. Obviously, they're not going to be able to feed themselves properly until they're at least over one, I think over two even, but it helps with that skill of being able to feed themselves so that you can also have your meal at the same time as them, and you're not trying to feed the baby first before you have your meal. So it's just going to help boost that independence for the babies when they're having their meals. Okay, so those are most of the pros. Now the cons. If you're going the baby-led weaning route, get ready to have your patience sharpened. You're gonna have to learn patience because these babies, they take their time. So it's very time consuming, I'd say, one of the cons. I mean, if you see that as a con, but if you have all the time in the world, then good for you. Another con is it's very messy and it gives room for a lot of food waste. So you have to supervise the babies whilst they're trying to feed themselves to avoid that much food waste. But you cannot avoid the mess. They're going to be messy. They're going to rub their whole face. They're going to rub their eyes. They're going to throw it on the floor. They're going to mess the table. You just have to really allow them do their thing, because that's how they're improving their motor skills as well as their independent skills. So yeah, it's quite messy. It can lead to quite a bit of food waste, and it's very time consuming. If you decide to not go with the baby-led weaning route, that's okay too, but I think from my pros and cons of going the baby-led weaning route, you would have sort of gotten the pros and cons from the non-baby-led weaning. But just in case, so the pros is it's not not as time consuming, because you're able to get your baby fed and get going with the rest of your activities for the day. It's not as wasteful as in baby-led weaning. It's still messy because babies will still try and grab things themselves and do things themselves, but I don't think it's as messy as when you're feeding them, as when they're feeding themselves, sorry. um what have I done personally? I think I've done mixed. I've done a bit of baby-led weaning and a bit of feeding the baby myself, to be honest with you. And a lot of the time it's dependent on if I'm in a haste or if we're about to go somewhere or if we need to get cracking with the rest of the activities for the day. So I'm just like, you know what, babes, we're gonna start our baby-led weaning tomorrow. Let's just feed you today and keep it going. Now the con of that is that sometimes they will rely on you too much to feed them and they will not feed themselves properly. All this to say, if you choose the baby-led weaning route or the non-baby-led weaning route, good luck. There's no right or wrong personally. These days it's the baby-led weaning route is being promoted, but you've got your pros and cons and you can do with it what you like. At the end of the day, as long as baby is feeding well, baby is gaining weight, baby is growing, and baby is hitting their milestones, that is what is important. Okay, one final tip I'd like to leave you with before we go is, for most babies, they'll be fussy with the food because they're not used to the meals. So one thing that has worked for us is persist with the first taste of the meal. So if you're feeding them with your hands or with a spoon, just persist for them to have the first bite of that meal. Because a lot of the time they reject food before even tasting it. They don't even want to see it or go near it. It could be because they're a bit overwhelmed. So I think persist with that first taste. Because what I find is with my baby, she would refuse the food outrightly even before tasting it. And then you manage to sneak it into her mouth, and then she's like, oh, this is not bad after all. And then she goes for it. So I think it's just one thing to, I feel like, highlight, to allow the babies will be fussy, but just give them that first taste. And if after the first taste they're not into it, then fair enough. I hope this video has been super helpful. If you have any questions at all, please leave a comment below and I'll be able to get back to you. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you next week in my next video. Lots of love.